To 7. He looked to the heavens when he heard the engines hum. A sky full of planes and each one with a bomb. And they're gonna wanna drop them.
Well, this is Nick here with a special of Islands at War. This was an opportunity that was too good to pass up. One of our listeners who has a connection with the occupation in the Channel Islands got in touch with us, sent us some absolutely amazing photographs from an album that he has all the way over in Australia, and I'll let him explain exactly who he is and why he's here. Hello, Andy.
Hey Nick, how are you going? Thank you very much. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to talk about Werner Rang. He is my grandfather. I was raised in Sark, where he was lived all his life after the war with his wife Phyllis Rang. They both jewelers ran jewelers for nearly 40 years, and Werner was a paramedic for St John's Ambulance in Sark for 29 years, which he was awarded the British Empire Medal for back in, I think, 99, so that was a great honour. The unique thing about Werner is he was a German medical orderly, conscripted way back in May 1939 in the German army, and then his unit was posted to the Channel Islands to cover the occupation of Guernsey and Sark predominantly. But his story starts way back in a small town in Tamsbrook, which is in central Germany. He was born March the 18th, 1920. He was lucky to have an idyllic childhood growing up. He was born into a farming family, and they also won like a bed and breakfast guest house. So they were quite fortunate enough during the 1920s and 30s. When Hitler came to power in January 1933, Werner's father was quite skeptical about the new party, and he was not encouraged nor coerced into joining any youth movements at the time. Werner did well at school. He started his accountancy exams, which he passed, and started work at a local bank. However, in May 1939, Werner had to present himself for a medical for the Reichsarbeitsdienst, which is the RAD conscription. He was informed after passing medical exam he'd be called up for service on the 1st of September 1939, a date all we know too well. From then on, in August, he boarded a train to Erfurt, which is a town quite close to his hometown, for garrison training with the Wehrmacht. When he joined the 4th Company of the Stanisats Ableitung 9, which is a medical training battalion, after various medical studies, he was transferred to the 12th Company Infantry Regiment 378, part of the 169th Division as a medical officer. The 169th Division was part of the 2nd and 16th German armies. They were tasked with taking areas of Luxembourg, Belgium, and northern France. It was coming now to that time at the end of May 1940. While the battalion was positioned facing the Maginot Line, where the French and German artillery exchanged fire, and then from then on some fierce fighting took place. The German forces were steadily advancing towards Verdun and finally Metz, which Werner's unit reached on 25th of June 1940. With the Battle of France virtually over, Werner's unit remained on occupational duties for some months. During April 1941, Werner was promoted to Lance Corporal. He was transferred to Infantry Regiment 583, which you may know that was part of the occupying forces in Guernsey. He was ordered to take up garrison duties on the Channel coast of France and a small town called Nullet near Cannes. Hitler decided the Channel Islands would be occupied by a complete and reinforced division. The 319th Infantry Division was sent to the islands on the 27th of April 1941. Werner later arrived on the 7th of October 41 with his unit 583rd to again take up occupational duties on the island of Guernsey. I do believe that they arrived in Guernsey by boat during that summer. They had lovely weather, and there were porpoises swimming around the boat, etc. During his time in Guernsey, he conducted looking after the medical troops and looking after any people that were ill during that time in Guernsey, as well as civilians. Moving on to the summer of 1942. Werner was transferred to Sark to carry out an inventory of medical supplies. This is where he met my nan, Phyllis Baker. She was a local girl who took German lessons at school throughout the occupation, as school children were forced to do that under the occupation rules. The German doctor on Sark required a translator, and Phyllis scored very well in her German language exams, so she was chosen for that role. As Werner was the medical NTA who accompanied the doctor, Phyllis and Werner met and carried out duties attending to people of Sark for medical ailments, etc. during that time. During October 1942, a British Major Appleyard carried out the commando raid on Sark, where 3 German soldiers were killed and 1 was taken back to England as a POW. In March 1943, Werner learnt the news of the commandant was killed in a minefield, along with his captain, and another soldier was seriously wounded. Werner rushed to the scene without hesitation. He entered the minefield and retrieved the wounded soldier, tended his injuries, and he luckily survived for Werner. Werner was later awarded the Iron Cross Second Class for his actions. In October, he was promoted to the rank of sergeant. Werner spent the rest of the war between the islands of Guernsey and Sark on occupational duties, where Phyllis continued being unofficial interpreter for the German doctor, and along with Werner on Sark. On the 9th of May 1945, Guernsey was liberated, with Sark following the next day. Werner was then sent to the East Cambs camp in Fareham as a POW. He still carried out medical duties for all the POWs in the camp. He and Phyllis kept in contact by letter over these years. I believe they have 150 letters written to each other, which they're still kept in the family today. In May 1948, Werner was going to be repatriated back to Germany. However, his hometown was now in the Russian zone and not too keen to go back in this. He invited Phyllis to come to England with the assistance of a Lady Vera Leveson-Gower, whom Werner worked for whilst as a POW. Werner did often gardening jobs around her home. They spent the whole week together, and at the end of the week, they decided to marry. This enabled Werner not to be repatriated, as he could marry a British subject and they could stay. With a brief time in England, they eventually moved back to Sark to make a life together. At this time, Phyllis met at the Happy Landings Hotel, where he was reunited with friends during the occupation. I believe Mr. Harold Blondell met him, who was a baker down at Perral, and they kept up a long and happy friendship. Going back into Sark, Werner was accepted into the community, as he had attended as a duty of care to the Sark people during the occupation. He had an eventful life in Sark. He was the island's constable, where he met Queen Elizabeth, who visited on both occasions. He set up a building business and later ran the local jury, as I mentioned, for 40 years. And he only retired at 91 years old. Following his 29 years service for St. John's as medical officer and driver in Sark, in 1990 he was awarded the British Empire Medal at the ripe old age of 70. During this event, the English tabloids heard about him, and they published stories in the Daily Mail and Daily Express, noting, "Is this the man? Is this the only man who was awarded a medal from Hitler and a medal from the Queen?" It's quite a funny story.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
In May 2010, Werner was made an honorary member of the Royal British Legion, a recommendation which came from a retired Air Commodore of the RAF. Um, from that, Werner continued enjoying his time in Sark and traveling and visiting. It became quite famous in the islands and further afield, whereby every time we went out to lunch together, somebody always knew him and had to have a chat. Werner passed away in 2018, 3 days short of his 99th birthday. He achieved so many things in life, but I think the most remarkable thing for Werner was during the war, he carried a sidearm throughout the war and it was never used. So it's quite remarkable, I believe. Thank you,
I
Nick.
mean that is a great story, and there's just so many aspects to his story throughout the occupation. And I, for one, never knew that he qualified as an accountant, because I'm an accountant, and that's not part of his story that I knew. As I mentioned to you when we exchanged emails, I knew him a little bit. I went to school at Elizabeth College here in the 80s. A lot of
Yeah.
people from Sark also came to Elizabeth College because they could board there at the time. So I had
Yeah.
a few friends from Sark.
Nice.
So I was a regular visitor to Sark in my summer holidays, etc. And did meet him a fair few times, and subsequent to that, and always a very pleasant man to have a few words with. And of course, if I'd known I was going to go down the road of doing podcasting about the occupation, if I could have seen forward all these years, I would undoubtedly have interviewed the man himself. I particularly like the story about the lady that helped your nan and pop to
Yeah.
make sure that he didn't have to go back to the Russian zone. I've read various bits
Yeah.
about that, and I just think it's a fantastic story. I've only read one other story where there was somebody like that lady who helped out someone else who was a
Yeah.
POW who was going to end up back in Germany, and so I think it's a fairly unique situation, shall we say?
Yeah. He had some funny stories that were during his time as a POW that and it was fortunate enough that he was sent to her estate, her property. Lady Levson-Gower was distant relation to the royal family, I believe, and played with Queen Victoria's great-grandchildren and things like that. But the funny thing is, when Phyllis went over to visit him in 1948, during that week they spent together, they went to London and went to Harrods with Lady Leveson-Gower, and they both couldn't believe it. They were having drinking tea and having cake in Harrods when, as a German POW, it's unthinkable, really.
Another aspect of the whole POW experience post the end of the war that I had never thought about until a couple of years ago. I was chatting to some friends in the UK, and they live in the north of England, and they'd had a large number of Italian prisoners of war in camps there, and Alan said to me, "Well, that's why we've got so many great ice cream places in around here."
Yeah, it could
And it's
be.
like, oh,
Yeah,
I'd never thought about it, because a lot of them did decide that they weren't going back to Italy.
yeah,
But
very
yeah,
true.
but this is brilliant. I mean, you sent us some fantastic photographs of your pop as well, which some of that stuff I'd never seen, and I certainly didn't expect to see Rommel in there. But
No, it's quite amazing that when we used to go over and see them in Sark when we were living in Guernsey for schooling and things, and they'd sometimes have their photo albums out, and we go through them and look at them, and um, only probably 10 years ago that we thought, we can't lose these for the family and people, generations going forward, that will scan them in and, put them on a shared drive for all the family to see. And that's when we were going through them and reading the backs of photos and things. And I believe one of his wartime friends that in Germany, I don't know if he or his colleague was a photographer, whereby he was sent what looks like official photos of some of the German High Command, and like you said, Rommel's included in there as well, and various members of the Luftwaffe and people having birthdays and things, and all very, normal things going on. Really is quite amazing.
yeah,
To see.
it's quite funny when you look at the Bundesarchive in Germany has a lot of photographs that are digitized on their website that you can look through of the Channel Islands, and it's amazing how many photos there are of of German officers or German soldiers in just normal scenarios. I lost count how many pictures there were of Germans at the little chapel, for example, because they'd stand there and pose for a photograph to send home. It's
absolutely.
isn't it?
It is. And they were quite fortunate enough that Werner was able to keep, or he was given a lot of photos of himself, because you wouldn't normally take photos of selfies of yourself back then. So I guess he had quite a few friends with cameras back in the day and things like that. So it's quite remarkable to still have them to this day and things, and especially with Phyllis and Werner's letters between the two as well. And there are a number of trinkets and items that Werner used to make out of wood and things like that during his time in the POW camp, and send them to Phyllis, and they're still in the family home today. So it's quite remarkable, really.
Yeah, that is amazing. That you've got all of that. Andy, thanks so much for your time. Really, really appreciate this. It's these little things that come out which I think really bring the whole story to life for our listeners.
Thanks for the opportunity.
And as I said to you on when we exchanged emails, I was if you'd come on, this would be absolutely brilliant, because this is too important a story not to cover it more widely. Well, Keith and I will be talking about it. We're recording the April 42 episode later on today, and we will of course mention it, but we'll trail it for talking about this. So thanks again for your time. We managed to sort out time zones, etc. So we could talk, but I really appreciate it. Thank you.
No, it's good. Thanks.
He looked to the heavens when he heard the engines hum. A sky full of planes, and each one with a bomb. And they're gonna wanna drop them on someone. It's 5 to 7. All his friends and family had gone.